Many people know former Vice President Aaron Burr from his infamous duel in which he shot and killed the former U.S. Secretary of Treasury Alexander Hamilton. After the duel, Burr's reputation and success in the realm of politics crumbled, and he became involved in a plot to take territory from Louisiana and possibly Mexico, which has come to be known as the Burr Conspiracy. Many exact details of this conspiracy have been lost to time. However, there are some facts that we can be fairly certain of. Plans for the conspiracy most likely began to be formed in early 1804, a few months before Burr's duel with Hamilton. The Louisiana Territory had disputed borders with Spain, and many residents wished to secede from the Union, which made the territory the perfect place for Burr to attempt to overtake. His foremost co-conspirator was General James Wilkinson, the then Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Army. Burr had convinced President Thomas Jefferson to name Wilkinson the governor of Louisiana, which helped with their plot. In August of 1804, Burr contacted Anthony Merry, Britain's minister to the United States, with an offer. The offer was to help Britain take Western territory from the United States in exchange for giving Burr the money and ships needed to do so. Merry sent word to Britain detailing Burr's offer. However, Burr never received the aid he requested. In April of 1805, shortly after Burr's term as vice president had ended, he went to the West to recruit supporters. One of these supporters was Harmon Blennerhassett, a rich Irish immigrant who owned a mansion on a small island in the Ohio River near Marietta. By the time Aaron Burr returned to Washington, D.C. in November, he managed to enlist a handful of supporters, including former U.S. Senator Jonathan Dayton and members of the Mexico Society, a group of businessmen in New Orleans who favored the annexation of Mexican territory in the West. By this point, rumors were starting to spread through newspapers about Burr's plots. However, border conflict with Spain was beginning to heat up, which fell into his plans perfectly. If things kept heading in this direction, it wouldn't be long until Jefferson sent Wilkinson to Louisiana with U.S. troops. Then, Wilkinson and Burr could attack Texas or Mexico. After winning, Burr could declare himself the ruler of the conquered lands. With things going according to plan, Burr was ready to move forward, so he sent a coded letter to Wilkinson explaining his plans. This letter later became known as the Cipher Letter and ended up being used heavily in Burr's treason trial. Aaron Burr set out from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in August of 1806. His first stop was Blennerhassett's, where he ordered Blennerhassett to ready his island as a military encampment. While Burr went around Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee, the rumors of his treasonous plans grew and began to cause him issues. What troubled him the most was the U.S. court in Frankfort, Kentucky, which called Burr 3 times to answer charges of treason. However, he was acquitted each time. Although Burr was able to stand firm in the face of these setbacks, Wilkinson was less brave. Believing that the plan was bound to fail, on October 9, 1806, Wilkinson wrote President Jefferson a letter detailing the conspiracy. Burr wasn't named, but his name had been attached to so many rumors that he didn't need naming to be implicated. Jefferson responded to Wilkinson with a cease and desist order, and the beginning of the end was upon them. On December 9, 1806, Ohio militiamen captured most of Burr's boats and supplies at a boatyard in Marietta. On December 11th, Blennerhassett's island was raided, but most of the men had already fled. When Burr met Blennerhassett on the Ohio River near the end of December, he was down to less than 100 men. Foolishly, he carried on, picking up new recruits he could find along the way. At Bayou Pier, Burr discovered there was a reward out for his capture and finally turned himself in, after which he was arraigned before a jury. He and his men insisted that they had no intention of attacking U.S. territory, and the jury failed to return an indictment. However, one of the judges ordered Burr to return to the courtroom. Believing he would be found guilty, Burr fled into the wilderness until he was captured again on February 13, 1807, and taken back to the federal court in Richmond, Virginia, to face trial for treason. In the trial, both sides used the cipher letter for their cases. However, the Constitution ended up being Burr's saving grace. It gave a very strict definition of treason, which only included levying war and aiding enemies. Supreme Court Justice John Marshall argued that to conspire to levy war and actually to levy war are distinct offenses. Essentially, Burr was too incompetent to qualify as treasonous. Although Burr was off the hook for treason, several states filed additional charges against him. To avoid these, he fled to Europe, where he unsuccessfully tried to convince Britain and France to join other North American invasion plots. Burr returned home in mid-1812. By then, most of America had forgotten about him and moved on to the war that was about to start with Britain.